So how to deconstruct the ego? So when I first got into this subject, I was very much like the ego was the devil, and the ego was something that we needed to deconstruct. And then when I met Roger Castillo and Ramesh Balsekar, they spoke about the ego in a positive way, which then made me not mention the word ego in spiritual circles, because I then didn't know how people were using it. And somebody like Nisargadatta Maharaj, and I think even Papaji didn't really mention the ego. So it's like one of these funny words that can either be splattered everywhere in spirituality, not be mentioned, or be talked in the exact opposite way. That's the nature of expressing this subject. Because it's not found in words, then everyone can have different words about it. Yes. So Roger and Ramesh would talk about it as the ego as the habits and the conditions of this body. So the up-to-date conditioning and habits. And everybody has an ego, and you can never get rid of the ego. And enlightenment doesn't mean getting rid of the ego. I can't remember exactly the way they would speak about it, but the way I interpreted it is that, and the way that it's seen here now, is that waking up is the detachment from the ego, or what Roger and Ramesh would call the ego. So it's no longer believing, but it's not even belief, it's an energetic shift that's no longer attaching to the habits and the conditions being the experiencer. So it's no longer this I that is the experiencer of life, this personal I, that is seen as an experience. But if we spoke about the ego in terms of what other people like Eckhart Tolle mean by the ego, I think they mean two things. They mean the same as what Roger and Ramesh meant, the detachment from believing the ego is who you are. And then I think they also mean the breaking down of the complex patterns that happen when you believe you are an ego. So I think it's twofold. It's breaking down of conditioning, and then also breaking down of the one that believes that it is the ego, or that energy which is saying, I am an ego experiencing life. And both are done in a similar manner, it seems. There is a questioning of what is real. There is a questioning of thoughts, imagination, reactivity. Needs, wants, desires, expectation, shame, guilt, the personality, relationships, your beliefs on anything. there is a questioning of that. And through the questioning of that, the person, the ego, becomes more simple. So rather than going into weeks, months, years of hatred against someone, against your job, against a situation, there is a coming back to what you actually feel, which is very vulnerable or insecure. So going below all of those stories and accepting the raw feeling, and then that dropping away faster. So the feeling comes up and then there's not the attachment and aversion to the feeling. And so that deconstructs the habits and the conditions, but then there is this next thing that happens, where there is the deconstruction of the I, the one that believes it's experiencing life. And that's what I predominantly speak about. In the past, I have spoken more about the habits and the conditions. But now I speak more about just the breaking of that energy which believes it is the experience to life. This is my life. And that is total freedom. That is total destruction of the ego. Total destruction of who you are. Who is it that's experiencing this now? Who is looking out of these eyes? And this is coming back to rest in that. So it's no longer something which is in movement that's experiencing. Who you are is perfectly still, without any quality. You'd say consciousness, but not a personal consciousness. Nisargadatta Maharaj would call it the witness. Sometimes he changes, it seems, the way he speaks, like all of us. But it's not a personal witnessing, it's not a personal consciousness. So what I call personal consciousness is personal awareness. I mean, all teachers call it different things because it's not something that can be talked about. So there is a person with personal awareness that we can see. So that person can move the attention to the chair, to the legs. It can move the attention onto thinking, and it can put the attention in the present moment. But there's something that knows that. There's something that's experiencing that cannot be found, that isn't a thing, that you can't even say is consciousness or the witness, because when it's truly known, it is everywhere, all things and no things simultaneously. So then it comes back to absolute mystery. But in speaking about it, I'm happy to call it the empty looking and the I am. Beingness. And when I speak about beingness or the I am, I'm not talking about something which can be experienced as such. Because there's a feeling of beingness, there's the sensation of being alive. And this is beyond that too. And it's love, but without being a feeling. It's absolute home, but without being a feeling of home. But all these things come with great complexity to speak about. And the most important part is the resonance. There can be a knowing of what's being spoken about, and this is the most important part of what I personally teach. And other things that other people teach, it's not saying the mind's higher or lower, because all other things like clarity or meditation or understanding the ego are really helpful in the deconstruction of who you are. But in the end, all of that vanishes and we're left without any words of someone being deconstructed, someone doing something, someone arriving somewhere, someone getting anything. And we're just here. And it cannot be said that someone awoke or someone didn't awake. It cannot be said someone is a doer or someone isn't a doer. Someone's watching or someone isn't watching. Here is total innocence. All labels and words and naming belong to time, and time appears here, but it's seen as a phenomena that's appearing and disappearing and not a reality. Reality is stillness. Everything else is illusory. It comes and goes. And that stillness is everything. So you could say that everything's real and unreal, but not like you imagine it. So like the table now that's in front of me, we could say that that's real and unreal, it's happening and it's not happening. But we could also say it's illusion because we're naming it a table. We're also seeing it in a particular way, which gives it the shape and form of a table. But if we had different eyes or different senses, we might see it in a different way and it therefore wouldn't be a table. So it's illusion like that as well. Our brain, our interpretation is making it a thing, an apparent thing. So everything is real and unreal, but that table is not a table, no matter what. It's only something that we're naming as a table. Another way of saying it is we could say there is presence happening. It's a live presence. So if you want to know a how-to, then this would be my advice. But please know that this advice isn't actually saying that there is somebody there that could do it. It will either happen or not. So there is a speaking of something, and then it will happen there, and the outcome of it is unknown. So the advice here would be to present oneself to the message of non-duality, investigate the illusory nature of thinking, investigate subject-object, and most people's predisposition that there is an I that's experiencing this. Do therapies to help release the energies from physical therapies to help release the energy from your body, and put the attention back in presence, back in I am, back in the empty looking, knowing that there isn't doership, so that either happens or not, and that there isn't somebody that will arrive there. So even though I'm suggesting all these things, the fundamental breakdown will be the one that believes it's going to arrive. I'm going to do all these things that Lisa says and arrive at peace. Who? Who will arrive? Who is experiencing right now?